Hello, bridge builders! I'm here with some exciting news. The first volume of interviews is now available on Amazon.com. The link can be found at eatlunchandboardgame.com. I promise that all proceeds from sales of this book will go right back into this podcast and channel. Whether that is new and better audio equipment for the podcast or video equipment for the YouTube channel, or even more games to review, the money will not be wasted. Click over to Amazon and get your copy of Eat Lunch and Board Game, the first course today. And thank you for supporting the show. In this episode, I talk with the man that is responsible for my print and play addiction, the man that introduced me to the website PNP Arcade, the admin for Martin's Print and Play Hideaway Facebook group, Martin Gonzalvez. Martin, like me, is completely immersed in the gaming hobby and industry. He not only runs the Hideaway, but he's also a podcaster and host of the monthly print and play geek list on Board Game Geek. He plays most games solo, and that lends to some interesting game choices. Check it out. All right, welcome back to Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins, and with me today is the admin for the Facebook group Print and Play Hideaway, Martin Gonzalvez. Martin, how you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
No, not too bad. Not too bad. We're kind of coming out of the winter, sort of into the spring, and then maybe we're okay. But you're out there on the West Coast, right?
Yes. Where the coldest it gets recently is if the forecast says it's going to be in the upper 40s. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a little bit too cold for me now.
No, we're not that lucky. I wake up right now. It's that time of year where you get up and it's like 38 degrees. So it's gonna be 80 by the time you go home. So you wear a coat into the office and look weird because you got to carry it out.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I spent a lot of time on the East Coast, in New Jersey and upstate New York, so I know the drill.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in the Midwest, you never know, and it's that time of year where it's just 30, 40 degree fluctuation. The day is normal.
Yeah.
So for Martin, anybody who doesn't know who you are, what do you do for the gaming industry?
Okay, well, that's how much time do we have?
Well, we
So
can go on forever if we want to and need to.
we might. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I think the main thing to talk about is that I'm the admin of Martin's Print and Play Hideaway on Facebook. I've been doing that since about August 2019, so coming up on 3 years now. And currently, we have about over 6,000 members. So it's kind of one of the places where people who are into the print and play side of the gaming hobby, which is the niche within the niche, if you will, right? So as we know, board gamers are already like a rarefied group. And then within that, there's a subsection of that. There's board gamers who like to make their own games. Craft them out of paper and cardboard and all kinds of other material. So I've been fortunate enough to be kind of heading that group for 3 years now. Now, aside from that, and connected to that is for about a year and a half now, I've been the host of the Print and Play group on Board Game Geek. So the monthly Print and Play Geek list. For those of you who are familiar with Board Game Geek. So every month I open up a new list and we pull together enthusiasts of print and play and encourage them to kind of post your latest builds or things that you plan to build. And this is a way that we kind of share, the things that we're working on and then inspire other folks to like, hey, I want to build that too, or I didn't even know about that. That's kind of cool, and those types of things. And then aside from the whole print and play side, I've also recently been made a moderator of the BG41 solo gaming group on Facebook. So I'm pretty proud of that. And there's a great bunch of people. Let's say it's something around between 10 to 15,000 members of that group and dedicated to solo board gaming. And finally, as we were talking about before we went on the air, I'm also the co-host of the Solosaurus gaming podcast, along with my co-host Michael Eckenfels. And this is a podcast that's been going on. We actually inherited it a couple of years ago from a couple of guys named Brandon and Carter who started the show, but then their lives kind of changed and they couldn't go on doing it. And Solosaurus is at its core, it's a podcast where we take a deep dive into one solo game per episode. We talk about the pros and cons, and then we give it we determine if it deserves the stamp of approval. That's the whole thing of the Solosaurus. We
This,
yeah, we even have like a graphic file. It's like, hey, if your game earned the stamp of approval, we send you the graphic file. Um, People who receive it, like they're probably like, well, we don't know what this is. What is this? Yes, thank you. But I mean, it's just a thing, and yeah, we've enjoyed doing that, and we've had the honor of hosting Solosaurus for a couple of years now. So yeah, so that's I'll stop there. There's other stuff, but I'll give it a pause right there, and then let you get a word in edgewise.
no, that's fine. So I actually came across you when you were on Gabe Barrett's podcast
Yes,
talking
yes,
about print and plays.
yes.
And I've talked about the website PNP Arcade to death on this show.
Oh, great.
You turned me on to that website. I have lost countless dollars on that website. I love to do print and play. I don't get as so some of the people in the group in the hideaway, man, those guys are
Hmm.
amazing, and
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of talent, that kind of patience, and that kind of equipment.
Right.
So I stick
Yeah.
mainly to roll and writes and card games and simpler board
Sure.
games. But man, some of those guys, and you included, you guys really can get in there and make some stuff.
Yeah. No. The there's a danger of like seeming elitist, right? It's like if you get into the print and play hobby, you're just getting in, and then you see people posting like really elaborate like builds. Because some people, myself included, kind of find enjoyment and satisfaction in um, how can I craft this game to a level of kind of quality that equals or exceeds a manufactured version of that game. And by the way, I just want to clarify that we're talking about, we focus on legitimate authorized print and
Yes.
play files, right? We're not talking about like folks pirating, making pirated copies of games, right? So by and large in the print and play hideaway, we focus on folks who are um, who purchase or get free print and play files, because there's a quite a lot of free print and play files that are being offered by designers and publishers, um, and whatever it is. And so the thought that I was trying to make earlier is a lot of folks are focused on the crafting aspect, right? In fact, the meme is, or the it's like some of us spend so much time crafting that we never get around to playing the things that we create. you know
Oh, I
um,
hear that.
yeah. But then we also want to make sure that, if, especially for folks who are new to the print and play hobby, let's say you just joined the Hideaway, uh, this encompasses folks from all sides of that spectrum. Whether like yourself, you just want to make like 9 or 18 card, button shy game builds, roll and writes, and those types of things. We absolutely welcome you to the fold, and everybody in between, right? So
Oh yeah.
it's not just like limited to folks who are super interested in crafting high quality games.
Well, because of you and I got into print and play, which was awesome because I started spending less money per Kickstarter,
Mhm.
but I backed more Kickstarters because they were cheaper. So I
Right.
didn't save any money.
Yeah.
I just got more games. And
Yeah.
and I do step out and but also, along that lines, it made me more aware of just buying like the PDF of the book or the EPUB of a book, and you know, I just load it into my Kindle. Like normally I would be like, I'll just buy the paperback, but I'm kind of more into the whole digital thing right now. And it was interesting. And I'm trying to think what the last build I did was I had the files for Monopoly Stock Exchange,
Okay.
which, as far as I can tell, that is the first expansion ever for a game, 1936.
Wow.
And
That's
I had the
impressive.
P&P files, and which wasn't much to it. I had to print off the stocks themselves. The P&P file is actually pretty cool the way that they made, because it sits over free parking and gives free
Mm-hmm.
parking a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the file came with like the square, but it had two flaps that you cut and glued together, so it just kind of slides over your
Oh,
free parking. And then it
nice.
came with a batch of stickers that you could print off to adjust your community chest and chance cards to make them fit the game. So
Cool.
I did that build, sent it to my cousin, and then a different cousin just a couple days ago, may have been yesterday actually, posted that he saw on Pinterest or something a Guess Who with somebody had fan made of The Office.
Oh, wow.
So I found the file, downloaded the file of all the characters and stuff. So now I gotta go hit up the local consignment shops and try to find a Guess Who that just I'm like, I don't even care if all the cards are there. As a matter of fact, I don't need the cards. All I need is the board and all the little doors. As long as that's all there,
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
Yeah. No, that's
So
great, man. That's
yeah,
awesome. Those are great projects.
I mean, they're fun. They're fun little ones to play with. And then, of course, like you said, button shy. Oh my goodness, I've got a whole card sleeve shoe box, whatever it is, card box full of the button shy that I've purchased
Yeah.
and that I've P&P'd. Just such a great website.
Well, what's your favorite button shy game?
Universal rule, no question,
Wow. Yeah, I've
no
seen that
question.
one. I've
Oh,
not played it. Yeah.
Chip Beauvais, that game's amazing.
Wow.
Sarah, his wife, did the art for it. So Chip was on my show and we talked about it. I'm like, I love Universal Rule. There's just something about the fact that he crammed a 4X game into
Hmm.
18 cards.
I now that you're talking about it, I mean, it's been on my radar forever, but I've never actually purchased it. But I think I may have to now. Now
Oh
with
yeah.
your strong recommendation.
Oh my gosh. There's no question that's my favorite. And then like I said, his wife did the artwork, and then I had her on my show to talk about doing board game art, and
Hmm.
now she did the artwork for our next game.
Hmm.
Because I run bearded board games with my friend, and so she did the artwork for our next game, which we're going to launch hopefully yet this year on
That's very
Kickstarter.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to run into in this industry.
It's true. It's true. Like I just started getting into. I just wanted to play, and I was interested. Well, I mean, this already is getting into the next question, right? Which I don't know if you want to get into there yet, but
You can do whatever.
all right. So your next question for me is how did you get into gaming? And so this kind of ties into what I was talking about. Is the person who actually got me into gaming, and this was around 2017, was my oldest son, Gabe, because he was already into it. Right after graduation from college, and whenever he would come home, he would bring a different game, and he would try to turn me on to it, and he would play it with his siblings, and for whatever reason, because I'd never really been into modern board games. The closest was when if I go back to school to college like years ago, I was into tabletop role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, like Call of Cthulhu. Those were the biggies, and so I didn't really have any idea of what modern board games were beyond the casual Monopoly or Clue and so on and so forth, right? And then and the stuff that Gabe was showing me wasn't really interesting to me until he brought Eldritch Horror. Are you familiar with this game?
I'm familiar. I've never played it, but I
Oh
am familiar
man.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the reason why it was appealing to me was because it was a board game version of these Call of Cthulhu role playing games that I would play back in school. And then, once I got into like career and stuff, and that just kind of all faded into the wayside, right? And then so he brings out this gigantic, it's enormous.
Oh yeah.
Eldritch Horror is huge, and it's a game that takes a long time to set up. There's so many card decks of all these various sizes, right? And he sets it up on our dinner table, and it takes up the whole table, and he's got to bring in another one. It's like it was just this gigantic, massive thing. It was super impressive. And then it takes a long time to play, as we discovered, 5-6 hours, right? And he was running it because I didn't know what I was doing. But basically, we become these characters, and it's this kind of world-spanning, desperate campaign against the evil plot of the Brotherhood, the evil Brotherhood, right? And this otherworldly, other dimensional being that's got this scheme that it's trying to basically, it's a very, very bad for the entire world, right? And you're this desperate ragtag team that's trying to stop them. And there's a whole lot of dice rolling. There's a whole lot of edge of your seat suspense, and I was enthralled the whole time. We were like yelling at the top of our lungs, and it's a co-op game, right? It's not.
That's how you know it's a good game, man. You're all
Yeah.
in.
And you would think that, like, because for most gamers, it's like competitive is where it's at. That's where like your competitive juices get flowing. This was a co-op game, and yet I was feeling myself getting swept up, and at every roll of the dice, it's like, no, give me a 5, give me a 6, oh, whatever. And so after that, I'm like, wow, that was an incredible experience. I shared it with my son, and I have to get a copy of this game. So that was it. And so that was actually my first board game purchase, was my own copy of Eldritch Horror, which I've since played like 6 or 7 times solo. Because as it turns out, shortly after that, all the kids just grew up and moved out, and then I was left with
How dare them?
I know, right? Like, how dare them get on with their lives?
Get you hooked on gaming, then leave you? I mean,
exactly.
What kind of kids are these?
Apparently, they want to go off and live their own lives. I mean,
craziness.
I know. So
mine are 3 and 10, so they're not.
Yeah, you have many more years with them.
I have plenty more time with them. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, no. So Eldritch Horror will always hold a special place in my heart, and that was the first of, I don't know, about 400 now. If you look behind me, you can see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you definitely haven't, at least lost your mind in board games yet. Well, maybe you have, So how do you pronounce? So the game that got me back into it was Settlers of Catan. Okay. How do you pronounce the game?
I've always said Settlers of Catan. Yeah. Is that right? I don't know.
So I had Pete Finland on a couple weeks ago, who is the CEO of Catan Studios, and he pronounced it Catan. So I feel vindicated that it's probably Catan.
I will yield to your superior information and data on this subject. I'm not, I've actually never played that game. Never played it. Yeah.
No, it's a good one. It's it was when I played it. Oh, it's been 10 years ago at least, because before my son was born, so at least 10 or 11, 12 years ago now. And it kind of opened my eyes, kind of like Eldritch Horror did for you, that there's other games out there than the Parker Brothers, Milton Bradley games. And man, I'm like, what else is there? And now, I got like 250 or something of games, and
it seems like it's like we're searching for something. We're searching for I don't know if I'm searching for the perfect game, but it's just like whenever and sometimes, and maybe this happens to you, where you tell yourself, okay, that's it. Like this, the stop the insanity. Not going to spend any more. I'm not going to back any more Kickstarters, whatever. And then it almost seems like as soon as you say that, like a day or two later, you see somebody posts on Facebook, or you see something, a video or whatever on YouTube or on Board Game Geek, and it's like, wow, that's a really cool game. And then you get swept up.
So I had my shelf of shame, like games I've never played, right?
Same.
I had that down at the beginning of the pandemic to like 2 or 3.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Like I didn't have a lot because I was very, I bought a game, I played it. I played it right then. And then I started this podcast. And all you darn guests keep coming up with all these games I've never heard of that sound amazing. Yeah. And now I've got my shelf of shame sits at 50. And
50. Wow.
Yeah, but it's funny because like I play two. Well, now I got to buy two more to keep it at 50, right? Because I got to stay at 50. It seems to be just that's what happens. I had it down to 48, and then and then I
Yeah.
bought one suggested. I finally got a good deal on one that a couple different guests have suggested. The farming game, the game invented on the seat of a tractor.
Oh no, I've not
So
heard
I
of that one.
just picked that one up. And then Pete Finland talked about a game called Shark because I love Acquire. And he's like,
Mm.
oh, this is like Acquire only meaner. And I'm like, wait, you can get meaner than Acquire? Like Acquire is a pretty mean game if you're playing it
Mhm.
right. And so I found a copy of Shark. I picked that up too.
Wow.
And so I'm back at 50. So I
Well,
can't get below 50 for long. So I
yeah.
understand your you
Well,
keep saying I'm not going to buy any more, and then you do anyway.
I mean, I'm at 80 right now,
Yeah, there you go.
and actually, I think so far for 2022, I'm actually doing a lot better than I did in previous years. By this point in previous years, I would have easily have acquired like I don't know 50, 60, 70 games already. By this point, where are we? We're in April, right? We're coming up
End
on
of
May.
April. Yeah.
Now to this point I am proud, quote unquote, air quotes, I'm proud to say that I've only purchased less than 10 games. That's me
Wow.
being proud.
I don't even want to think about how many I've bought or backed on Kickstarter for that matter.
Yeah.
So, so do you get into Kickstarters? Do you back a lot of games?
um I've been very I in the past, yes, I've become a lot more selective for Kickstarters. This year I've only backed Earth, which is a kind of a tableau building nature themed game by a guy named Magui is his last name. He's the publisher, and it's like a Canadian. I think it's emblematic. It's symbolic of the kind of game project that I think Kickstarter is properly for, which is they're an indie company. They're not one of these big publishers, and they legitimately need the Kickstarter to be able to produce their vision, right? Like I prefer to go after and to support like what seems to be independent creators and independent publishers who legitimately are using the crowdfunding to get support, not these things. And you know what I'm talking about, like these big houses that put out games that they're gonna be massive hits no matter what. It's just that they're going on Kickstarter because they want to juice it up and do the whole play the whole unlocks thing, or we're going to reveal more stretch goals and all this stuff and whatnot. And to me, those are the kinds of projects I don't back on
Yeah.
Kickstarter, just because I feel like they don't need it. They don't need my support. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I really go after like what appear to be independent creators who really, really need the support. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I would say I back most of the Kickstarters that I back fund less than $25,000.
Right.
They're more of the indie market, the smaller market. Now I'm not saying that every now and then I won't be like suckered into one of those bigger games. I'm like, and then I gotta back it anyway. But yeah, it's those are the ones I back are the smaller ones. I like to throw money for the print and play, especially for a lot of the roll and rights lately. There's been a lot of really good roll and rights that have really taken off on Kickstarter for like $5, and it makes like 20 grand. And it's like, I wish
Yeah.
I had a $5 idea that I could make 20 grand off of, because
Yeah.
it was just a print and play only. So the guy just emails you a file. What's that cost? $0.
Right.
No
It's
shipping
interesting.
nightmares.
Yeah, no, that I mean, it is. You're right. Like, there's been an explosion
Yeah,
of print and play Kickstarters recently, and to me, that's both kind of a good thing, but it's also this is a little bit of a controversial statement, but um, because it lowers the bar for entry, then it also because okay, in general, I'll put this out there. It's easy to design a game. It's hard to design a good game. That's how I feel about it, right? And
I
so,
agree.
um, it with the Kickstarters, it lowers the bar of entry where that statement is even like 10 times more true, where like, it's a lot easier now for a lot more people who have like a bit of graphic design expertise to put out a Kickstarter like that, and fun, right? And for a certain segment of the population that isn't really, they're looking for light experiences and not very like demanding or not very original, that's great. That's all fine. um, if you've spent a little time in the hobby and you're kind of like hungry for, kind of, you're looking for something that you haven't seen before, kind of like a new spin on mechanism, something, clever, something this and that, then it becomes, I think it becomes harder to see the signal through all the noise, is what I'm trying to say there. I don't know
No,
if
I
like,
think
I
you're
was,
I think you're 100% right.
yeah.
Um, and
So
that's
yeah.
yeah, and there's a massive flood of games every Tuesday that hits Kickstarter.
The struggle is real. Every Tuesday, it's like wallet damage.
Yeah, so I've started now where I don't even look.
Yeah.
I follow enough people on Kickstarter, and so there's a couple people that if they back something, I'm like, okay, I'll go take a look at it.
Right.
But then if I get the same email that so and so and so and so and so and so were all backing this game, well, now I
Mhm.
gotta go look because 3 people. I mean, this has to be worth looking at. I go
Oh yeah.
look at it, and I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
okay. I mean,
Same.
how much is it? Okay, whatever. And
It.
then
Yeah.
you know,
It gets to the point where you're so plugged in, where it's like I don't even need marketing to reach me. I will find out about the good ones, the ones
yeah,
that
I
really
always
like.
feel like when if I don't hear about your game somehow, wasn't meant to be. I can tell you that because, like you said, I between the targeted Facebook ads that are going to get me,
Hmm.
and the when I log into Kickstarter anyway, it's gonna it's gonna
Right.
suggest like, hey, while you were gone, look at all these other things that came up, and then all the emails I get from all the people I follow. Yeah, if I don't hear about your game, it was definitely not meant to be.
Yeah. The roll and write that I got most interested in and I backed it, is the one called Detroit. No, it's called Motor City, and it's designed by Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle. These are the same folks who designed Fleet the Dice game and Three Sisters, or their more recent. So they kind of have a trilogy of heavier roll and write games. Um, and so I actually made a print and play preview copy of Motor City, and I really like the mechanisms and how the way that they use the dice as an action selection mechanism. Because a lot of these like roll and writes that I find are like I'll take a look at their videos or whatever, and it's like roll the dice and then use the values and place them somewhere on your board, and then mark something off and then wash, rinse, repeat. And that, like I said earlier, like that's great. But for folks like me who we've kind of been in the hobby a little while. I've been in the hobby for 5 years now, and I'm searching for like just different things. And so I felt that Motor City did some things that I'd never seen before with with kind of like its action selection using dice. So
Now you're making me
I'm
wish I'd have bought it. I didn't buy that one. I stalked it. And I made a decision right at the end to not back it.
yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
just, if I remember correctly, it was just a little bit expensive for a roll and write.
Sure, it is. I think it's worth it because they're aiming for a heavier. 'Cause most roll and writes are pretty light.
Well, this thing's saying on Board Game Geek real quick that the weight on that thing is a 3, so that's a pretty heavy weight for a roll and write.
It is. It is, and I won't lie, but and I'm the type of gamer who I kind of struggle with rules comprehension with learning games, which is a challenge because when you're trying to keep up with a regular podcast and you have to learn a lot of games, and there was a period of time when folks are actually sending Michael and me like games to review, and then our like list of games started getting longer and longer and longer. We had to work through them, and it doesn't get any easier. People think, oh, the more you do this, the easier it becomes to learn, and then for me, no, it doesn't. Like I sit in awe of folks on the Dice Tower or Rado or Quackalope and these content creators who seem to like every week multiple new games that you're now speaking to. Like clearly you've learned it to the point where you can now demo it and then you can review it, And I'm just like, how do you do that? I can't. My brain doesn't work that way.
That happens. My brain, I don't know how it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
Other times I'm like, did I put my brain in today? So if I manage to make it out to the West Coast, what
hmm
is your current favorite game? What game is currently sitting out on your table that we would play?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Obsession by Dan Halligan. Have you heard of that one?
I I want to say yes, but I'm not sure. I don't think I have.
So
Was
it's
it
been
a
around for.
Kickstarter?
I think he did have a Kickstarter, although no, I take that back. I don't. He's an indie, and he self publishes, and the first edition came out in 2018, and he's since released a couple of expansions. Basically, it's a board game version of kind of a Victorian era Jane Austen novel, or Downton Abbey, if you will. So it's basically you're running a country house in England, in Victorian England, and you're hosting events at this house, and you're using the people who work there, the staff, as workers to be able to like support these events. And the goal is to increase your reputation so that you're going to attract the favor of the wealthiest and most prominent family in the region, in the area, in Derbyshire, which is where it's set. Because this is true to like what like British aristocratic society was at the time. Um, Everything is all about social status, right? And so if you were able to attract the favor of the most prominent family, then you had made it. That meant that there was wealth and prosperity and high reputation and good marriage and whatever for your own family. So this game kind of immerses you in that world. And now I realize that that's not the usual theme for a board game, but I love that theme. And
So is it a
so
co-op or are you working against each other?
it is you compete. You're competing against rival families for the favor of the most prominent family. Um, I've never played it against other people because I'm primarily a solo player. Uh, so the reason why I really like it is because it has a very well developed and challenging solo mode that actually comes with solo cards that they're
Tells
marked
you what they
beginner
do.
or intermediate or hard.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah. So and the other thing about this game is that it's a labor of love. It's Dan Halligan's labor of love. Like he poured a lot of research and graphical design and just thought into the components. Like you open up the box, and then there are boxes, smaller boxes inside for each family, each family that ships with the game. So it feels like a premium thing, and it just gives you that feeling of uh, just like it could be like a family heirloom type box, So
So
yeah.
this isn't
Anyway,
one of your print and plays.
no, no, no. There would be no way for me to reproduce the splendor of this game.
No, that
So
sounds
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
I
and
looked it up here.
it's currently in the BGG like top 50 hotness or whatever. It's like it's almost a permanent fixture there now, just
No,
because
it's
it's up
looks
there.
great. Looks
Yeah, so
awesome.
that's
It's very
that's my current
expensive
favorite.
though. That is,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not
well,
cheap.
because it's probably in between printings. He's already done like I don't know several print runs, and he may have sold out of the current one. So, but he Dan Halligan, the designer and publisher, he's very attentive. He listens. He's one of the greatest at customer service that I've ever met in the board game arena. And he's just like a super down to earth, super nice person. And so he will listen to you, and like he basically regularly, like maybe every couple of years, he'll have another printing. So he's constantly iterating on this
I'll
title.
definitely have to keep my eyes and ears out for the next print run of that. It looks beautiful from the pictures, so
hmm
color me intrigued. So at your day job, do you play games on your lunch hour?
um, I have occasionally in the past. It's kind of awkward to for me to solo play. So I work at a tech company that's very large and there's a lot of people, and let's just put it this way: it would be less awkward for me to do it if I actually had somebody to play with on my lunch break. Um, but so far that hasn't like I've tried to spark exactly one kind of board game night with my work acquaintances pre-pandemic, and a few people showed up and we played, oddly enough, the game Pandemic. I figured this is going to be a great introduction for these folks. It's one of the classics, and then they seemed to have a good time. But then, like a
Oh,
week and a half later, I said, "Okay, that was a great intro. Here's the next one," and then nobody showed up. So I'm like, "Okay, I guess that's that."
that's unfortunate. Yeah. So I just started a new company about, well, over a year ago now. And the company I left, we had a thriving board game
Oh, that's nice.
lunchtime. We would have two or three games going, depending on how many people showed up and what games we were playing that day.
Nice.
But my new company, it's feast or famine for me there. I've
Mm-hmm.
either got, I've had one day of one person, played a couple two-player games, and then last week we had 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I had 2 copies of the same game, so I'm teaching and playing. You know, like helping the table over here to my left explain the rules, and I'm trying to play the game on my right. Um, don't worry, I didn't win. Um, Probably because I wasn't paying the best attention. And then today we played again, and it was just me and 2 people. So,
Right.
but the other people had meetings and all came over. Their meeting got done, and so everybody's like watching us finish the game. They're all like standing around looking, who's gonna win, because we got a traveling trophy, and
Mm.
whoever wins gets to take the trophy, put it on the cube.
Oh, that's cool.
So we have people watching, like, who's gonna get the trophy? Who's gonna get the trophy? And I'm like, don't worry, it's not gonna be me. Geez. So yeah, we were playing Red Dragon Inn.
Okay.
So it's a game that they really love. So I'm like, I don't care if we play the same game every week. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, my Red Dragon Inn has so many characters to it that you can,
Mm-hmm.
we can keep buying new characters for all I care.
That's
Keep
great.
it keep it fresh.
I love that you work at a place that there's folks with that enthusiasm and they're close at hand,
Yeah,
and you can kind of sustain it, from week to week. That's great.
yeah, and like I said, I've played just me and one other person, and then I've played for a long time. It was like three. Three was the people we just kept having three, and then out of nowhere, just seven. I'm like, what? And a couple people didn't even show up that day. So I'm like, we've got like 9 or 10 on the list, so we'll see. I'm sure we'll keep going. We'll keep building. It's all you can do, right?
Hmm.
Just keep trying. So if you did play on a lunch hour, a full 60 minutes, what would be your
Hmm.
go-to 60-minute game?
Aeon's End, if you've heard of that one, it's a deck builder. Um, and I was first introduced to this in 2018. Um, and it's kind of fantasy themed, and it puts a couple of different spins on the deck building, kind of formula, where it has variable turn order, which means that you very easily, based on, there's a turn order deck, so you don't take turns. You draw a card from the turn order deck, and if it's your turn again, if it comes up, it's your number, you could take 2 turns in a row. Conversely, if you're unlucky, the nemesis could take multiple turns in a row and really do you a lot of damage. So, um, but yeah, so Aeon's End would be my go-to game that fits into 60 minutes,
So
and
how
it's
many
a
does that
reliably good
play?
time. 1 to 4, with the base box. It's a co-op, and you're imagine like it's a game where you play all these like characters, these breach mages they're called, and you go up against a nemesis, and the nemesis has unique attacks. The nemesis has a deck, which you kind of create, you construct it before play. There's instructions on how to construct it, and the base box comes with 4 nemesis, each with their own kind of unique deck. So uh, you can think of them as bosses in a video game, and each boss has a different strategy or technique that you have to figure out to be able to defeat it. Because what works on one isn't going to work on another. And on the flip side, the way that they hurt you is also different. Um,
Hmm.
so I think it's a really well designed and kind of thoughtful game that it's kind of gutsy because it changes. The other cool thing about Aeon's End is, most deck builders, when you purchase, upgraded cards to add to your deck, they end up in your discard pile, and you don't get them immediately until have depleted your draw pile, and it's all discard, and then
You
you
shuffle it
shuffle
all
your
back, yeah.
discard, becomes your new draw pile, and then you're now hoping that the cards that you bought are going to come into your hand because it's a random, right? Because you shuffled. Well, in Aeon's End, it's a no shuffle. So the order in which you discard cards and add new cards to the discard pile is you control that, which means the order in which you're going to draw them and they come into your hand is known to you, which means now you can be strategic about that, because if you've gotten a couple of cards that combo well with each other, then you can make them come out and into your hand at the same time, and then start dealing like more damage or like doubling the effect or whatever it is. So there's
Interesting.
yeah, so there's less randomness, there's more strategy in that game.
Yeah,
So
I've seen this game at the game shop. I've never really taken much notice of it. But see, this is what I said. This is why I gotta play one to make room in my 50 for this one.
yeah, that's been my go-to for a long time.
No, it sounds good. I mean, I like deck builders, and this one sounds like a little different spin on it. Like, one of my all time favorite deck builders is Star Realms. Just there's something. It's
Hmm.
just so clean. It's so
Hmm.
fast. It's so simple. Never
Yeah.
play with 3 players. It is stupid. I don't even know why they felt like. I think that's one of my problems with gaming today is that every game feels the need
Mhm.
to play 1 to 6.
Right. Yeah.
Some games just
Yeah.
aren't meant for that. I mean, it's just they're just not like
Yeah.
like that. So many games, like I just said, Star Realms at 3 player is terrible
Yeah. All right.
because 2 people gang up on one person, and that person gets so weak that they become a non-factor. So then he and the other player attack you until you're a non-factor, and then the player you've already beat up has built himself back up, and nobody ever leaves the game, and so it's like
Right.
this game is just and
Yeah.
so some games just don't translate well to single player or exceeding their player limits.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that like Star Realms, first of all, I think of it as like a very kind of clean and pure deck builder, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And really, I think its best expression is in a head to head, right, one to
Yep.
one. I will say that Star Realms Frontiers is a $20 box
I
with
love it.
8 solo bosses in the box,
Yep.
and each boss is frustrating and devious because they break the rules in particular ways. So,
Yep.
like Aeon's End, on a smaller scale, you have to try different strategies to beat each boss. And
Yep.
so that to me is the definition of a decent solo game.
Yeah, I solo they did a really good job with the solo game on Star Realms, because like, how do you
I
make this a solo game? And not only did they did it very, very well.
They did it well. I think the before Frontiers came out, because it came out in like 2019 or 2020, I want to say
Well,
they
let's
had
say the
already.
Kickstarter was 1 year, and a year and a half later we got Frontiers.
Right,
I
right,
was
right.
I was so frustrating.
I remember learning about it and then buying my copy on the floor at Origins 2019, Origins convention. Um, but they had already tried that similar kind of solo boss, but with a campaign in Hero Realms, in the Ruin of Thandar expansion a couple of years before. But I don't think it was as successful or as streamlined as the Star Realms Frontiers, experience.
It has
Uh,
been interesting watching Hero Realms and Star Realms as they kind of just keep one passes the other, then they bring it back, then they bring the other one up to it.
yeah.
Because I remember the big thing that drew me into Hero Realms was everybody having a different starting hand,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that was awesome. And then Star Realms did it with the command decks or something. I think is what they call them.
Yeah.
And so of course I had to buy all of those.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm pretty sure I have all of Star Realms, and it takes
Hmm.
up like a huge chunk of a box.
Yeah.
But I do. I think Star Realms is great. I love how they still support it, and they
Yeah.
still like High Alert. I think was the last set that just came out not too long ago. I bought it all, sleeved it all, and I haven't played a darn game of it yet. Uh, I need to. I don't
Yeah.
count it on my shelf of shame because if I put all the expansions on there that I haven't played, then the number gets obscene.
But I think Star Realms is a kind of game where it's evergreen, right? It's so
Yep.
easy to get to the table. It's really great to introduce people to the hobby. It's a great gateway game, I think. But as you point out, two at a time.
Yes. Yeah, that game became really big at my last office because we had a lot of people all of a sudden were gone onto like job sites or left the company or whatever, and we could never get more than two people at the same time, and so we started just playing Star Realms, and all of a sudden we were like, "Whoa, this game is awesome!" And then we were like, "They're like, hey, like, oh, we already started this game of Star Realms. You can play the winner." And we would play like two or three during a lunch hour, which is a good segue into how about a 30-minute game for a lunch half hour?
Yeah, I think I'll have to go with a very obscure hidden gem called Hit Z Road. If you've heard of that one, so Hit Z
I have
Road.
not heard of this.
Yeah, no. Well, because all of these games that I'm mentioning are kind of prominent in the solo community, right? So that's kind of like my where I come from. Print and play and solo. So I'm kind of off the beaten path here. And then when you mentioned earlier, like Acquire, I'd heard of it, I've never played it. Shark, I've never heard of it all. So we're kind of coming at the same hobby from different angles here.
No, that's
But
that's what's so great about this hobby is there's so many different games, so many different people, so many different, like you said, angles to just hit this thing from. So
yeah,
back to Hit Z Road.
Hit Z Road is a game designed by Martin Wallace. So Martin Wallace is kind of most famous for designing Brass Birmingham and Brass Lancashire, which are kind of heavy
Yeah.
engine builders, economic simulations, those types of things. But well, I mean, Martin Wallace has designed, I don't know, thousands of games by this point. He's a very, very experienced game designer. But Hit Z Road is a lighter game, which you don't expect from Wallace. And it's a dice chucker. And it comes with a multiplayer game which kind of has auction and bidding mechanisms, and then it also has a solo version which totally does away with the auction and bidding mechanisms, and in my opinion still actually works as a game, which is kind of a crazy achievement, right? It's like Wallace figured out, it's like, with these same components, how can I create a multiplayer experience, and then by removing this mechanism, how could it still be a decent solo experience? But
That's awesome.
basically, for me as a solo game, it plays over 8 rounds, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get from one side of the country to the other in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. And each round, you have 3 paths to choose from, and these are represented by cards. Now, the middle path, you have one card face up, one card face down. So what that means is one half of what you're going to encounter on that path is already known to you, and then the other half is unknown. The the top choice, both cards are face down, which means the entire path is unknown. But you do get a bonus for choosing the unknown path. You'll get, because there's resources, right? In the zombie apocalypse, you're low on resources, you're low on ammo, you're low on fuel, and the third resource is adrenaline, or yeah, I think it's adrenaline. Um, yeah, adrenaline is a resource. Go figure. Now, the third path is the
Hmm.
exact opposite, where both cards are face up. So it's a completely known quantity. You know exactly what's going to happen, what you have to resolve for the first card and the second card, but you have to pay. In exchange for the unknown quantity, you have to pay resources to be able to take the known path. So there's kind of like every round you're already faced with this decision of which path do I take, and do I give up the resources to take the known quantity, but what if the unknown quantity is like super easy, and then I gain resources? So you're like you're constantly kind of tortured every round, and there's 8 rounds of that. And then once you have to, because eventually, so like most zombie games, the name of the game is, can I avoid combat as much as possible, because combat is brutal and I'm going to die, or my survivors are going to die. But sometimes combat is inevitable, and also fighting and winning combats is your main way of earning victory points. And so there's a table at the end which says, once you make it to the end, well, how many victory points did you earn, and then you compare it against this table to see how well you did. So anyway, it's a compact little game. It's, to me, it's like really really well designed. It's the kind of game I've described it as, the kind of game that I'll play when I don't I don't feel like playing any games. You know what I mean? Like it'll save me on a night where, for whatever reason, I'm just like, I don't feel like playing a game, or I don't have the motivation, but I can play Hit Road. So yeah.
It's awesome. No, that reminds me that my universal rule, there's a singularity, so you can play it solo. I keep forgetting to test it out. I need to, though.
Yeah.
I need to test that one out. So what would be a hidden gem game? A game that you feel does not get enough attention.
So I'm going to reveal a little bit of my fanboy here. I'm going to mention another Martin Wallace game.
Uh-oh.
I I like a couple of Martin Wallace games. I don't like all Martin Wallace games. Like, I've never played Brass. I've never played Brass Birmingham. I've never played Brass Lancashire. I'll probably end up buying them at some point, but I'm not ready yet. But he put out a game called Australia, AUZ.
Yep.
TRALIA, Australia. And this concept is completely off the wall, and it's kind of the sequel to a story written by the author Neil Gaiman, which was called A Study in Emerald. Which, very very briefly, I'll try to be as brief as I can. Imagine a world where all of those heroes, like classic heroes like Sherlock Holmes and all these other folks, basically like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, are all living in a world which has been taken over by Cthulhu. Cthulhu won back in Victorian England, and now it is a kind of global dictatorship that is lorded over by the old ones. And Sherlock Holmes and his team are a group of kind of freedom fighters / terrorists who are trying to bring down the Cthulhu world order. So that's kind of like the setup for this original game called A Study in Emerald, which is an actual game. And then Australia is the sequel. So spoiler alert, the dissidents in the first game push back Cthulhu and his minions, and they have to make a retreat. And so they retreat. Where do they retreat to? Of course, to the Australian outback. The most remote place. Right, the most remote place, and this is set in like the 1910s. And so you play the part of the human expeditionary forces with kind of 1910s technology military, and you are establishing beachheads on the shores of Australia, and you're going to start building rail lines into the outback to get resources to build up your military, and you're going to take the fight to Cthulhu, who are all hibernating. They're literally sleeping in the outback until the 23rd turn of the game. At turn 23, they all start waking up, and they all start heading for your ports and your farms and all of your resources. And now it becomes this all-out kind of skirmish between the forces, the awakening forces of Cthulhu and the human expeditionary forces. So it's like it's this bonkers mixture of, it's half a train resource economic sim that Wallace is famous for, and then the back half of it becomes this light skirmish game, where you have asymmetric forces, and then you have heroes that you can hire, and then they buff some of your units and all this stuff. So it's a game concept that shouldn't work. It absolutely shouldn't work. because it's like one of those things where like it's like a fever dream of like, let's just put every mechanism into it, and wouldn't it be cool if it had this? Except in the hands of like a veteran designer like Martin Wallace, he actually finds a way to make it all work. And so
That's
for
crazy.
me, Australia is like one of the best games that people really haven't heard of, and it should be a lot more prominent.
Like as soon as you said it, I remember the cover art of a guy with binoculars. That's the only
Yes.
thing I. It's the only thing I knew about the game was that it was AU with a big huge Z and a guy with binoculars. That's all I remember. I knew nothing about the game.
Yeah. And
So
if you look at the binoculars at the lens, reflected in the lens is a gigantic Cthulhu in the distance. So that's why that cover art is so cool.
oh, man, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sounds crazy. Like it
It is.
just sounds like chaos as a game.
Yeah. The other thing was we reviewed that game on Solosaurus, and we actually both Michael and because Michael had never heard of it, and I was already raving about it to him, and so he actually played it, and we both agreed we that actually earned a full stamp of approval from both of us, because sometimes we'll disagree and I'll say, oh, I think it's a stomp game, and he won't agree with me, and sometimes it's the other way around. But this time one of the rare occasions when the stars aligned and both of us gave the stomp to Australia. And one thing I will say about all of the many good things I can say about the game is that the rule book is so good. It's like a model. Like if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, do you have like a model rule book that I can pattern mine after?" And the first thing that would come to my mind is go look at the Australia rule book. Make sure that your rule book just follows that format, and then you'll be good to go.
Interesting.
Yeah,
No, that's
it's a
it's
good
good to
rule book.
know. It's good to know. No, I just finished reading the Klaus Teuber's My Journey to Catan autobiography, and it talked about how when they wrote the rules to Catan, they broke all the rules writing the rules. Like the rule book was like nothing anybody had ever seen before, and so that's interesting because so many rule books are just. It's funny. I've been playing a lot of older games lately, right?
Hmm.
Because my guests are talking about these old games from the '60s and '70s, and you get those rule books, and it's like, how did anybody ever figure out
Yeah,
how these games work? Like, I love Acquire, but man, the rules inside the lid, because I have the 3M original release bookshelf
yeah.
edition, the rules inside that are like, what? Because it's like there's no real diagrams to help explain anything.
No,
You're at the mercy of you understanding Sid Sackson's mindset at the time he
right.
wrote the rule book. But it's interesting. So I'm really intrigued to play Australia for nothing else, just to read the rule book.
Yeah.
So maybe I will.
Yeah, and then they had a Kickstarter, I think, last year where they released a couple of expansions to Australia, which might still be available. But yeah, it's to
Gotta
me
be
that's what.
honest. Any game with expansions, I'm already suckered into. Those get me every time. So in Australia, can you be a different color? Are there colors?
Yeah,
What
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
what
So
color?
I
So
will
what color do you gravitate towards in gaming?
always blue.
Always blue, but see, you don't have to fight anybody playing solo.
It depends on the game. So if you're playing a Euro game, and I used to be like a thematic gamer. I used to be like, or what kind of controversially is called Ameritrash, air quotes, right? Um, I know that term. A lot of people get triggered by it, and they're like, oh, and I personally, kind of take it with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's where I started. Especially like Eldritch Horror is like the king of that style of like lots of dice rolling, lots of randomness, lots of theme, that style of game. And then my first, I don't know, easily 100 games were of a similar mold, right? And I thought, well, this is now that I'm in modern tabletop games, these are what they are. And then I would hear about like these games that they refer to as Euro games, right, with
Mm-hmm.
worker placement mechanisms and whatnot, and those seemed strange and alien and foreign to me, like literally foreign, and a lot of them are
Are
designed by
foreign. Yeah.
by German or Italian designers, right? Um, and I just I don't understand. I don't understand those games. There's nothing about them that appeals to me, right? And then last like 2 years ago, I played a game called Newton, which is designed by a guy named Simone Luciani, and his frequent collaborator Nestore Mangione. I hope I'm not butchering their names now. And but it appealed to me because I'm like, I like those types of themes where it's like it's about Sir Isaac Newton and about like the dawn of the Age of Enlightenment, and it's about like people who are going around the world to gather knowledge and research and look at books and study and whatnot. And I loved it. I'm like, this is great. I played it like so many times in a row. Um, and then I'm like, what else has this guy designed? And turns out, well, Luciani is pretty prolific. And then I got into Lorenzo Il Magnifico. I got into Grand Austria Hotel. Those are the ones I have right now. And then I just acquired Golem, which is one of his newer ones. These are all put out by Cranio Games, Cranio Publishing House. And so anyway, the point is, most Euros are like race for points, right? There, you play and you have victory points. And if ever they have a solo mode, they just have some type of mechanism where, or maybe an AI opponent who is also scoring points, and then you just have to outscore them to win, or they outscore you and you lose, right? So um, that in Euro games, that's very, very common. But there are other solo experiences where you actually go up and compete against an AI system that's been designed to simulate the play of an experienced human player, but in a kind of streamlined way. Because as a solo player, what you don't want to end up doing is, I'm going to play my entire turn and all of the, like, think about all of the decisions I have to make on my turn, and then play a whole entire other turn, because that's too much of a load, right? Like, so a good solo game to me and a good solo design is, allow me to play my turn pretty much the way I would in multiplayer, but then give me an easy to operate, kind of abstracted, streamlined AI who has the effects of a human player, but doesn't require all the different steps to achieve those effects. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there are games that do that. I'm trying to think of the one that's springing to mind right now is not Imperial Settlers, but 51st State. 51st State, designed by Ignacy Cevicek, and I think I'm pronouncing the designer's name correctly. He's Polish. Have you heard about that one, 51st State?
Yeah, and it's
Okay.
also right over your shoulder.
Hey, that's one of my favorite games. But the solo mode features an abstracted AI opponent who is going to, if you don't play right, they will raise all of your buildings.
Oh,
Yeah, and make it and they will score a lot of points. So you have to figure out how to raise their buildings before he does the same to you, and you have to figure out how to outscore him. So anyway, there's a couple of different ways. I mean, there's many different ways to set up a good solo mode. Some of them feature an opponent that you can actually defeat or can defeat you, and some of them are just like more, beat your own score types of
yeah,
experiences. Yeah.
yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the Clever trilogy by Wolfgang Varsh,
Mm-hmm.
the Gonchon Clever and all that, and so
Oh, nice.
yeah, I try to beat my own high score, but sometimes like I score so high, I'm like, well, never beat that. And then and then I don't play that board anymore. I'm like, I don't think I can possibly beat that score.
I didn't know. You just taught me that Wolfgang Varsh designed Ganschen Clever.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I've heard of him because of a game called Taverns of Tiefenthal,
Yep.
which is like the
Taverns of
sequel
Tiefendal. Yep.
to Quacks of Quedlinburg, which I
Quacks
have
of
both of those
Quedlinburg.
games, but I've only played Taverns. I
Quacks is
adore.
awesome. I've not played
Okay.
Taverns yet. It's high on my list. I actually had a board game idea that I was working out, and then I saw and then Taverns came out because I started my design, and was working it up and coming up with all these ideas, and then I was watching some video like, hey, this is the newest game and it's Taverns of Tiefendal, and they showed it. I'm like, that was my idea. But yeah, so I haven't played Taverns yet. Not because of that. I actually want to play it because it was my, see how much how much is it like the idea I had? But yeah,
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 I'm the opposite. I've played Taverns and I adore it. I haven't played Quacks yet. But
Quacks
yeah,
is hilarious. It's a bag building game,
yeah.
and every time you're like, I should stop, and you're like, I'm going to draw one more. Boom, you're done.
Okay.
You should just stop. Whenever you get to a point where you think you should stop, you should just stop.
So it's kind of like push your luck.
Yeah, well, it's a bag building push your luck. So you're trying to keep all the different stuff in there, and you're trying to go around the track as far as you can. But
Hmm.
after so many like explosions or something like that, then because you're a quack, right? You're not good at this, but you're not good at making potions. So that's the premise: is you're trying to fake these people into believing you are really good at it, and so when
Oh
you
my
go too
gosh.
far, then you explode. So
Oh man,
or
that's
like
hilarious.
like your little cauldron blows up, and you're like, oh, I should have
Oh my
I should have
gosh.
stopped one draw earlier. So that
I
game
need
was a
to.
hoot. I need to, but I do need to play Taverns. It's high on my list. I just haven't had time
Yeah.
because I have all these other games that I'm drowning in.
Right. Yeah. No, I really, now that you've explained Quacks to me, I need to bring it because the one time a year that I actually get to play with other people is around the holidays when we visit family. And last year I brought like 10 games, and my wife was like getting on my case. She's like, don't bring too many games. First of all, it takes up too much space in the car because we have to drive to Albuquerque, New Mexico, from where we are, which is like a 18-hour drive or something like that.
No.
And then when we got there, like, it was fascinating to me the games that I had brought, and the games that I thought were going to be a hit were not, like Azul. Azul obviously is like one of the classic family games. They didn't really like it. But I brought a game called Cascadia, which
Yep.
I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah,
Yep.
Flat Out Games, by the way, they kind of own that kind of abstract puzzle tile laying. Verdant is their newer one, and then Cascadia, and then Calico, the one about the cats, was the
Yep.
first one that I heard of. Um, so Cascadia, actually backed the Kickstarter of that, and I made the official print and play of it, and I brought my brand new Kickstarter copy, and man, they loved it. Like, it was the first game they requested to play it over and over and over again, multiple days. They just want to keep playing Cascadia and getting their scores up, and trying different combos of cards and whatnot. And I'm just like, I never realized. I wouldn't have predicted that would be the one to hit with them. They liked it so much that I left my copy with them. I figured I can leave my Kickstarter copy with them because
You
I
got
have a
the
print and play
yeah
copy that
yeah.
I'm pretty happy with. So
I'm also always amazed at the games that take off and the games that don't. Right, with my friends and family. Like lately, the game that has been a massive success is No Thanks,
okay, yeah,
the card game by Amigo Games.
yeah,
It it's such a simple
yeah,
game,
yeah.
but man, everybody like you teach somebody to play it, and the first time they're terrible at it,
Right.
but then like, oh, I got it, I got it, I got it, and then the next time they overcompensate the other way, and they still get their butt kicked. And they're like, no, 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 play it again, play it again, play it again. I have played No Thanks probably close to 20 times, and I've only had it for like a month.
That's
Because every
awesome.
every time I showed it to somebody, we had to play it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times because like, oh, I got no, 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 try again, no, 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 no. This time I got it. This time I got it. I'm like, you realize I'm taking 9 cards out at random every time. It's not the same 9 cards. But oh yeah, that's one I really thought would be just kind of like a filler game that I will just play this way. And the people like, hey, did you bring No Thanks? Um,
Speaking of which, you may not be aware of this. There is a free print and play retheme of No Thanks on Board Game Geek that is Pokemon themed. I don't know if you're interested in that.
the my son loves Pokemon. I'll have
There you go.
to find it. So real quick before I let you go,
Yeah,
anybody looking for a print and play and you're not sure it's out there, by all means, go to the print and play hideaway and just post the question.
sure. Yeah,
Somebody will get back with you within a
probably
day.
me.
But I'll tell you, I found a bunch, and I've downloaded a bunch. I've got a whole hard drive file full of unprinted print and plays that I've backed.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, the my only regret in my print and plays is with Button Shy. I got into Button Shy gaming right before Jason Tagmeyer went pro,
Mm,
and so he never had anything in stock.
mm,
And so PNP Arcade was amazing because
hmm
I could buy this for $3, a game that never in stock. And you know, sure as the day is long, the second I printed up and cut out everything for Universal Rule and we were playing it and really just like going hog wild with it, he comes out with Singularity, and I'm like, it's $3 to back it for the print and play, or it's like $20 or $30 to buy. I'm like, I'll just buy the print and play. And I played it so much, not Singularity with the other decks. I'm like, man, this is one I really wish I would have just, you know, bought the
hmm
production copy of just to have the cards. But Button Shy games, so many great games
hmm
there, all different kinds. You name it. Some of them are really deep, some of them aren't. But in the end, there's only really been one that I was like, I probably won't play this one again. And it happens to be one I bought the production copy of.
Oh.
Yeah. Like, can I trade this in?
I wish that I was more into abstract puzzles because that's what a lot of button shy games at that 9 or 18 card count. That's what they end up being their primary mechanic, right? Is because button shy, their whole thing is we'll give you a bigger experience with a small number of cards. Um, so Sprolopolis, if you've ever heard of that one,
Oh, yes. One of my
was kind of
favorites.
like, yeah, and a lot of the deservedly so, like a lot of people love it and whatever. And then I was super excited. I'm like, I love the theme of this, it's like the city thing, and then I made a print and play copy. I backed the Kickstarter, and then I played it, and I was just like, left me cold. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? And then I tried it again, played it. It just wasn't grabbing me, and I'm just like, until I figured out that I'm generally not, that's not how my brain works, is for abstract puzzle games, so it took me a while to figure that out. So yeah, but I am interested in Universal Rule. I will
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
check that
The
out.
4X experience on 18 cards is just, it's amazing. And you really want to ratchet it up, get all of it, and then mix all the planets together and pull out 17 at random.
Okay.
Because they're all so there's like three decks, right? And they're all balanced inside their own little deck. But then you can shuffle them all together and just pull out random ones. And so maybe what would have been a great planet in deck two may not be a great deck in this game,
hmm
or a great planet in this game, because what it needs to feed off of isn't in the deck.
hmm
And so
There
it's
you
a
go.
lot of fun. My friends and I, we play that one a lot. It's what, like I said, it is my favorite. There's a lot of good ones. A couple good social deduction games in there, and some bluffing games and everything. But Button Shy's usually got something for everybody. P&P Arcade's got something for everybody, um,
Yeah.
of all levels. If you're wanting to test your board game build abilities, that's where you can go to do it.
Yeah. I think the next thing I'm going to build is so the folks who put out Autobahn, which is a like a medium weight kind of Euro game. It's on Kickstarter right now as we're recording this. They were very generous and they put out a free print and play file. So I think I'm going to build that one just because I'm curious. And my default, kind of game that I gravitate to nowadays is kind of a midweight Euro, um, more than anything else. So I'm curious about that one. So that's going to be my next build, I think.
Yeah, I've been sucked back into like the 60s and 70s, man, playing these games that are just astounding to be 60 years old. And you're like, wow, this game is 50 years old. Man, there's some good ones out there that I'm like, man, who's got the copyright to this right now? Can I buy it off them and just bring it back to life? Because like Acquire right now is not in production, which is sad. Should always be in production. Well, Martin, I'd like to thank you for being on my show today. If anybody want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Well, you mentioned it. I think that probably the easiest way is to just join the Print and Play Hideaway on Facebook. And you can also reach us through the Solosaurus podcast at gmail.com. If you're on Board Game Geek, you can search for me. My handle is Dr. Henry Armitage, which is a character from the Cthulhu mythos. So it's super nerdy. Dr. Henry Armitage on Board Game Geek. Anyway, any of those ways is to get a hold of me. That's fine. And I just want to say thank you, Adam. This has been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, thanks for inviting me, man.
Oh, no problem. And again, thank you for coming on the show. And as usual, if you want to reach out to me, eatlunchandboardgame.com, facebook.com/groups/eatlunchandboardgame, or shoot me an email at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com. And remember, board games build bridges.
Stay in tune with all things sports around Indiana and the nation with the Crash Course Podcast. Each week, we tackle the big storylines from the world of the Colts, Pacers, and the Indiana college scene, while also keeping a pulse on the nation. We record live weekly at twitch.tv/3C Media and can be found on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard, you can catch the Crash Course Podcast.
When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.